The term GOAT, greatest of all time, it's thrown around honestly a little too freely these days. When 20 different games get a Game of the Year edition every year, this idea of being the best, to me, has really been diluted over the years. I don't think this is an inherently bad thing, though. Personally, I find it difficult to compare games, especially of different genres. They have different priorities, different appeals, and will execute on different parts of the gaming experience. So trying to compare one to the other is really counterproductive, I think. Now, all that said, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 may be the single best game I have ever played. Building off of the previous entries in the series, taking the good, getting rid of the bad, this game reaches an astounding high. If you're a fan of JRPGs, I'm not sure why or how you haven't played this game yet, but you need to play this game. Let's talk about why. And remember, if you enjoy this video even half as much as I enjoy Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you owe it to me and yourself to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Now, before I get into the game itself, I just want to talk about the Xenoblade Chronicles series as a whole. I first discovered this series actually shortly after the Switch console released, because the hype for the second game was really picking up. Now, I'm a big fan of RPGs, love Final Fantasies, so on a whim, really, I just pre-ordered the collector's edition, as well as a copy of the first game for the Wii. And thank God I did. Immediately, the first game grabbed me. I can't remember the last time I've sunk hours of my life into a game without even feeling the passage of time. That first game really nailed the feeling of a single-player MMO RPG game. 2 came out and I thought improved the combat, but then also burdened the game with a lot of additional mechanics, especially all the different blades. It was a cool idea, and I know a lot of people really liked it, but as I've shared many times on this channel, I'm not really the biggest guy, like Pokemon guy. So for me, I wasn't super into collecting all the blades and maxing out all the different blades. I pretty much made my party and kind of stuck with it. On top of that, for both of these first 2 games, I never really got into doing too much of the side content that they provided, mostly because they are predominantly fetch quests or collectathons. I'm not really into that mindless of a task, so if I didn't naturally complete side quests while I was exploring areas, it was likely that I never went back and finished them. The DLC expansion for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out, took that base game, and I thought refined it to near perfection. All the tedious stuff from the base game was streamlined. I really enjoyed what they did with Torna, and I was excited for what was to come next. To me, it felt like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 just got announced out of nowhere. It just was at the end of one of these Nintendo Directs. At least for me, I don't know, maybe I just missed all the rumors and news, but came out of nowhere and was releasing it in just like a month afterwards, once it switched release dates with Splatoon. I thought there was really little to no hype or fanfare, and I was honestly pretty nervous about this game going in, almost didn't even buy it the day it came out. That was mostly fueled by the debacle that was the special edition pre-order on the Nintendo website. And that's its own video, I'm not going to get into that. Needless to say, I felt betrayed and hurt. But I swallowed my pride, I bought the game anyway, going in knowing really nothing, only that it kind of promised to somehow connect the previous 2 games in the series, which were mostly standalone adventures. This third game tells the story of 2 warring nations, Kevez and Agnes, embroiled in an endless war since the dawn of time. The story is mature, dark, focusing on the pain of loss, the pointlessness of war, and that human urge to live and fight and to hold on to hope, persisting in spite of the death and darkness that covers every moment of life. The game follows 2 squads of 3 people, one from each army, who are forced together at the beginning of the game to become Ouroboros, to combat this mysterious foe, Mobius. As the narrative unfolds, it is both epic and personal in scale. While it is the fate of a world at hand, none of these 6 characters are ever lost to service that overarching story. Each one is a fully fledged character that experiences their own complete arc in the face of this situation. Now, Noah and Mio are clearly the 2 leads of the story, but the story is really about all 6 of these characters and the journey that they are on. One thing I love so much about this game is that rather than force you to choose your team members to fight in combat, which many RPGs make you do, all 6 always fight. They are always present. They engage in combat together. I really liked that. I think that's a great touch. I think more RPGs should do that. I hate having like a 9-person party, but then only letting 4 fight in combat. It's never made sense to me. Initially, I thought 6 was maybe too many people on the field at once to manage, but it's fine. It's totally manageable, and I think a lot of other RPGs could learn from this approach. The concept of blades from the second game are present in this game. However, rather than being characters, they take the form of weapons and ultimately classes, which dictate a specific character's role in battle. I also really like this change because it allows for party customization, again without leaving anybody out. As the story progresses, you can do side quests, special side quests, that are called hero quests, that unlock new classes for your party to use. In addition to that, one hero that you meet in these hero quests can also be slotted in as a 7th party member. The combat is the absolute best part of this game. It is a refined combination of both prior games. The Kavessian army represents the first game, where your arts recharge over time, really care about positioning, things like that. And the Agnian army represents the second game. Arts recharge with hits, they have elemental touches, things like that. It's a really nice touch. It immediately calls back to the previous games in the series, and that's kind of where a lot of the callbacks happen. Again, similar to the second game, the connections to the previous game are really hidden until like the very, very end of the game, but you see a lot of these sort of references and callbacks as you're experiencing the story. So when you're talking to people from Kevez, you kind of pick up on stuff from that first Xenoblade game. And when you're talking to the Agnian people, you pick up on little Easter eggs and things from the second Xenoblade game. It's really cool. It's a great touch, and it does all pay off at the end of the story. Combat itself feels like you're playing both games at the same time. It's kind of hard to describe, but they really combined those 2 combat systems into this, like, I want to say streamlined, but that makes it sound simplified, and it's definitely not simplified, but it's also just not cumbersome and overloaded. Admittedly, in the early parts of the game, before you unlock all aspects of combat, like art canceling especially, it is a little clunky, but once you get to that point where you do have all of the combat unlocked, it's just the smoothest combat in the series for sure, and pretty much any RPG. It also was really great. It felt like they reduced enemy health in general, which is always a complaint that I had about the previous games. Every encounter felt like such a slog because the enemy just has so much health and you would just stand there beating them down for way too long. So they really made combat feel a lot better, and without removing the challenge, you can still die. You can still definitely lose if you're not paying attention. So they really balanced it quite well. Now, as I said earlier, as much as I really do love this series, it's never been one that I spent a lot of time doing the side content in. Just because it's not that engaging. If it's not an engaging quest, I'm not going to do it just to check a item off a list. However, the addition of hero quests means that is no longer the case with Xenoblade 3. Each of these hero quests are a fully voiced, essentially side story that introduces you to a character. Some of these stories were just so good and engaging, I would forget that I was doing side content. I don't know how you can play through the game and not experience some of these hero quests, because the characters, usually they have some prior relationship to at least one person in your party. There's so much that goes into it. There's so much interaction and dynamics that you pick up. It feels like it's part of the main narrative. These hero quests feel like things that you are intended to do to really fully experience and appreciate the story. I happily poured hours of my time into these side quests. The only downside, and if you haven't played the game yet, please hear this warning, you can very quickly over-level yourself out of the main quests and the main story. Not the worst thing in the world, but the key thing that's the problem here is that when you unlock a class at the end of a hero quest, only one of the 6 members of your party gets access to it. For the other 5 members to gain access, you have to equip that class to the one character and then fight enemies. The only problem is you only progress on unlocking that class for other characters if the enemies you're fighting are within 5 levels of your party. I did not know that, and so I went and did all these side quests because I just wanted to meet all these characters, but they were all about at the same level. And what happened is I leveled myself just outside of all the content, and then as I would progress the main story, I was so over-leveled that I just never unlocked so many of these classes on the rest of my party. And this is a huge problem because there's 3 roles in the game. There's attacker, defender, healer, and 2 members of your party are better fit to each of those. And more often than not, the character, when you unlocked a new class, it would go to a character that didn't fit that role. So an attack-focused character would get a healer class, for example. So you don't want that person using that class. You want to get it onto your actual healers as fast as possible. And I just couldn't because I leveled myself out of the content. And before I realized what had happened, it was too late. So take my warning on that. What might possibly be the most impressive thing about this game, though, and I know I keep saying that, but it just all keeps getting better, is the world itself. The maps in this game are absolutely huge. If you just follow the main story and go to where the checkpoint tells you to go to, you will maybe explore like 20% of the world, and that is doing a disservice to you. There are so many little things, so many secrets to find, so much to do, whether that's just hidden chests or bosses or new side quests. It's worth exploring, and exploration is actually fun. Each of the main areas, they all have unique climates, themes. You know when you're in a new area, it feels like a different area. And I have to say the game looks great too, considering it's a Switch game. It looks really good. And the music, as it always has been with this series, is phenomenal. Personally, I really enjoyed the flutes that they included in the soundtrack. I get why it might not work for everybody, but I really liked it. I thought the soundtrack to this game was outstanding. Xenoblade 3 is a complete triumph. It builds off of the games that came before it, but also innovates and iterates on the series as well. The story is engaging. Really at no point does it stall. It has some deeply emotional moments that are impactful and that work with great characters. I played this game for 80 hours, and genuinely at the end, I didn't want to finish the game. I didn't want to go to the last area past the point of no return because I just wasn't ready to be done with the game. I just wanted to stay in the endless now that was Xenoblade 3. But unfortunately, time's arrow marches ever forward, and I had to finish the game and move on. But hopefully with this review, somebody else will be inspired to try this game out. And this series. The series is phenomenal. I recommend everybody play all 3 of the Xenoblade games if you can. For a final score, I would give the story a 4.5 out of 5. The presentation, a 5 out of 5. The gameplay, a 5 out of 5. and an overall rating of a 5 out of 5. With a value, just go buy this game. Honestly, even if you don't like RPGs, I think you might like this game. That's how good it is. I put it up there with like Persona 5 as far as accessibility and engaging non-RPG people. But what do you think? Have you played Xenoblade 3? Was I being too kind to it? Do let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what games you want to play next. Is Xenoblade your game of the year? Is it your GOAT, as it might be mine? It's definitely my game of the year. Not to spoil my end of the year video, but GOAT, I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all with the next video.